Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. The October 5th meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee to the TPO is called to order. If you would call the roll, Sarah. Well, before that, if everyone will rise and face the flag, please.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Now, Sarah, if you would call the roll, please.
Sure.
Lisa.
Greg Stoll.
Here.
Daniel Spradling.
Here.
Thank you. Guy Tucker.
Here.
Philip Weinberg.
Here.
Liz Clark Riley.
I'm here. Sorry, I was muted.
Thank you. David Carter.
I'm here.
Pete Pettit.
Here.
Adam Kohler.
Here.
Bill Vollmer.
Is showing virtually.
Bill Vollmer. Okay. Tony Sasso.
Here.
Michelle Balzanto.
Hi, I'm here.
Thank you. Peter Fuskus.
Here.
Martin Lamb. Oh, I'm sorry. I checked the wrong person. I've got David Miller, pardon me. Orson Tarver.
Present.
Thank you. And Arlen DeBlau.
Here.
Thank you. And Mr. Vollmer.
He's showing.
So I'm showing what the record reflects. I'm showing Bill Vollmer. He hasn't verbally acknowledged.
Ask him to unmute his mic. You may have it muted.
Mr. Vollmer, can you unmute your mic? You don't see anything in the chat box from him either.
We have established forum.
Yep.
So without having to hear directly from them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa. All right, first up is, do we have any public comments, either anyone present or virtually? Sarah, do we have anything virtually? No. Okay, moving on to the Executive Director's report. You're Jenna.
Yes, well, it's a pleasure to see you both virtually and in person this afternoon. I wanted to give you an update on some things happening right now. In your agenda package, you have the draft meeting minutes and the attendance record for the September 10th TPO Governing Board meeting. On the bottom of page 2 in your agenda package, this is the Executive Director's report, but on the bottom of page 2 is the TPO Governing Board action items. And just to brief you on the last item, which is approval of the State Road 528 design recommendations that we discussed at our last meeting. The board approved option B, which is to update the current design to extend the bridge length over the Banana River and the causeway removal pursued by others as a separate project. And if you remember, that was an option that was not brought to you previously. It was a new option that the DOT put on the table so that they would not have to go all the way back to the PD&E phase, which would have been a much more extreme measure to do a redesign and a PD&E update. 8 votes in favor, 3 against. Part of the motion also included a caveat that the DOT continue working with the IRL and EP to prioritize the increased bridge height and to explore options with stakeholders for the existing causeway removal to run concurrent with the construction, which of course is programmed out in 2030, 2031. So it was confirmed that option B would not delay the State Road 401 bridge replacement PD&E, which was very important to the port because they did not want the 401 PD&E to slip because of this additional design effort. So wanted to make sure you all understood that. That was the motion that the board took. And I think now the ball is really in DOT's court because at this point they need to come up with the additional $2.5 million to update the design in current year. And of course, there's $47 million in additional construction costs in the out year, 2030, 2031, to do the lengthening of the bridge. So that is the status of that project right now. Moving on, I also wanted to mention to you, DOT is hosting a virtual Transflex web series, and they run Friday mornings in October from 9 to 10:30 a.m. And there's a link provided on the in your package. And these webinars are really topics that are important to the role of developing and enhancing communities. So there's a series on broadband, technology, resiliency, a lot of different topics. It's free. So any of our members that want to participate in those webinars, feel free. October 9th, October 16th, October 23rd are the next 3 webinars. TPO staff routinely participate in those webinars because it's a lot of really good information. October is now National Pedestrian Safety Month, which is the first federally designated month-long pedestrian safety awareness event. Also, October 7th is National Walk to School Day. So communities are really encouraged to select any day in October, our local schools to celebrate Walk to School Day. So following up on that, the Florida DOT created a Safe Routes to School program. They've done this by taking federal safety funds given to the state, and a portion of them is designated to Safe Routes to School projects or to the program. And it's to fund projects within 2 miles of a school to encourage more students to walk or bicycle to school. Applications are requested on an annual basis, and they are due by December the 31st to DOT, and it's to really help communities address those school transportation needs from an infrastructure standpoint. And we talked a little bit about the Safe Routes to School program at our last meeting with the school routes safety project that Sarah presented on. Also, DOT again uses federal transportation dollars allocated to the state to address safety through a program called High Visibility Enforcement Grant Program, which was created to identify high crash locations in Florida, and then local law enforcement agencies can submit grant applications to pay for overtime for officers. And it's just a great way to help educate folks. You don't have to necessarily hand out tickets to people that are breaking the law, but it can be used as an education component and to hit those really high crash locations. So it's additional money that is out there that can really help our communities and help assist in what we're trying to do here as a TPO, and that is to bring down those serious injuries and fatalities. Also in your package, number 3, the DOT recently completed an analysis called the 2020 Macroeconomic Analysis Report, and it looks at the linkages between transportation investment and economic performance. And it's a method to measure the economic benefits of the work program investments. And so in your package, there's a link that is provided there, lots of really good information For every dollar spent on infrastructure, there's a return on investment of over $4 in Florida. And that is a number that is specific to Florida. Florida is really a good investment, and we can help with economic recovery, especially if we do get another stimulus package. I think that it would be something very good for us to be able to invest in more infrastructure to get our priority projects taken care of. Also in your package, I provided you a copy of a letter to the DOT, and it is recapping some discussions that we've been having with our transportation subcommittee. This is in reference to the TPO's federal funding for the first 3 years of the work program between fiscal year 22 through 24. And the DOT did some programming with our SU funding and TA funding that we were not privy to. And so we've been having some discussions with them and the DOT secretary, as well as some of the other MPOs here in Central Florida. So there's a copy of that letter in your package. And if you have any questions about that, I'll be happy to give you an update on that or answer any questions that you might have. And then the last thing I wanted to bring to your attention, as you know, the governor extended the virtual meetings for 1 more month. And so it's set to expire November the 1st. So there's also notice that this is expected to be the last invitation and that in-person meetings will begin in November. Of course, we don't meet in November. Our next meeting will be in December. However, if this does happen, we will continue to hold virtual meetings. That is something that we want to continue, especially for the public. But if we cannot get a physical quorum, then our meetings will be considered a working meeting. In other words, we can't take any action. If a member has an extenuating circumstance, then of course, for the December meetings, be sure and send that to us and let us know. And as long as we can get a physical quorum, then the members may participate remotely, provided that you have a significant circumstance, and then the members participating remotely will need to be approved by the quorum that is present for them to be able to vote. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understands that. We will continue to have virtual meetings. They're too valuable. But if the governor does not extend the order past November the 1st, we will have to have a quorum physically present if we're going to take any action on an item. All right, and I think that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Georgiana. One thing I want to, Adam, you had a question?
How is our quorum based on? The number of actual physical member slots or the number of actual physical members that are assigned to this board?
Well, there are 10 members is a quorum. So we have to have 10 physical people in this room, 10 members.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Pete?
Yeah, I'd like to expand on Georgiana's remote meetings. See, this is a small group that allowing remote meetings. Court system is going remote, pretty much remote. Businesses all across the state are going remote. Every entity that's going remote is minus dollars for road building. So the full extent and loss of revenues is not even begun to be realized, and probably won't be realized in the next 2 or 3 years. But the hit road building will be a lot more than what we imagined, just due to the fact that remote school, remote college, remote meeting, remote court. It's attracted millions and millions and millions of dollars from road building and the gas tax. And then later on, you mentioned that the state really needs to look for alternates to the gas tax.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all the more reason why it's almost an emergency.
Yes.
Sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the reason for approving option B was to later, under another project by whomever, it would be to remove the existing causeway to increase water flow within the Banana River Lagoon.
Correct,
Thank you.
yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring that up with Georgiana. I just want to board to understand that option that was approved by the TPO was not presented to us.
That is
When
correct.
we had the discussion and the presentations to us, but that option was not considered. That came later on after our recommendation was heard by the TPO, and they decided to look into it further. Then they came up with this Plan B as far as elevating the bridge and leaving the removal of the 401 bridge for a later date. So that's something that did not come before us, but the TPO made that decision. Anyone else have any comments on Georgiana's executive report? Sarah?
Ms. Clark Riley said, asked, will there be stricter masking and distancing at in-person meetings? I felt uncomfortable the last few times at in-person meetings. So will we be further distancing or making stricter masking?
Well, I think that we need to make sure that we are all social distancing and wearing masks. This facility, and of course, I think under the circumstances, we're going to have to continue to split the committees. It would be very difficult for the TAC and CAC to be able to meet together. However, they say that we can get up to 40 people in the room, social distancing, but as we can see, it's already a little tight the way we are right now. But absolutely, I think we need to be very safe. We need to social distance. I apologize that you felt uncomfortable, but again, if you have an extenuating circumstance, and if that circumstance is that you just don't feel comfortable being that close to folks, then that certainly is appropriate for you not to be physically present. It's just for us to take action, we're going to have 10 people, 10 members in this room if the governor does not extend the order.
Yep. Peter?
Well, I feel uncomfortable wearing the mask. And the World Health Organization said masks don't make any difference. So.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, well, moving on. First action item is the consent agenda, which will be passed in one motion, and we'll read it aloud for the record. First item is 5A is the approval of our CAC meeting minutes from September 8th. 5B is approval of the work order for work order 21-12K, the transportation resiliency master plan scope of work, which is on page 40 of your printed agenda. And unless someone wants to pull that, we'll go into 5C, which is approval of the Memorandum of Understanding of Regional Cooperation, Transportation System Management and Operations on page 54 of your agenda. So if anyone has anything to discuss on any of those items, otherwise I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion by Martin, second by Adam. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next action item is 6A, approval of the Vision Zero Action Plan. I believe Kim, you're up.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ryan Cunningham. I'm with Kittleson & Associates, a consultant for the TPO, joined by Kim Smith, project manager on the Vision Zero project. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you all today and to present this to you, so thank you for having me. I'll be doing a bit of a presentation on the action plan itself, and then Kim will be walking us through the municipal toolkits that were developed as part of the project. So this is shows the cover page of the action plan, which was finalized in July a couple months ago. We had quite a bit of engagement in a Vision Zero task force as part of this project, which included a lot of engineers and planners from the local governments, as well as some engaged citizens, some of which are in this committee, so thanks for your involvement. as you can see just from some of the quotes that we pulled out of the workshops that we did and the engagement that we did with everybody, there's a lot of concern on safety, particularly when we're talking about Vision Zero, severe injury and fatality crashes as it regards walkability, bikeability, vulnerable road users. When we look at vehicular crashes, there's a big tie to speed. So we look at speeding and high-speed facilities was one of our major focuses. And then we also are looking more at distracted driving. So whether that be distracted from cell phone usage, alcohol, driving under the influence, things like that. So just to give you some of the overall things that we were looking at as part of this that we really focused in on. As we were putting together our action plan for kind of the foundation of the successful program really was leadership, and that's here at the TPO level as well as with the local governments in identifying zero as the vision for this goal and seeing that through. And then safer roads and safer speeds, and that's really the engineering and enforcement side of the equation. The third was equity-based education and community engagement, and we've been seeing quite a bit of uptick in that, particularly in the ads that Kim's going to go over in a little bit. And then data-driven decision-making and being transparent with that data and that analysis. So the action items that we put together were driven by the crash data that we have, the crash reports and supporting information. We'll be updating that on a regular basis, but also developing some tools online to share that information transparently with the citizens. Areas of focus, I mentioned this a little bit in some of the quotes I went through, but speeds were very much correlated to severe injury and fatal crashes. So 57% of our crashes resulting in severe injuries or fatalities were on roadways with speeds greater than 45 miles per hour. Distracted driving showed up as a big indicator in our severe injury and fatal crashes. We also saw inexperienced drivers kind of lighting up on that younger side. So less than 24-year-old, or I should say drivers that are under 24 years old were involved in almost 20% of our fatal and severe injury crashes. And then also where we have no lighting or poor lighting on our roadway system, we may expect to see a lot of vehicular crashes in those types of areas, particularly like run off the road crashes. But what was interesting is we saw 40% of the crashes that occurred in those areas resulting in severe injury and fatality were pedestrian related. So we're seeing a lot more pedestrians in these areas where there's no lighting or poor lighting than we expected. So we're going to put a focus on lighting the roadway system where it needs it most. As part of the effort, we identified what we call the high injury network. And that's really just a focus on, where are these crashes occurring that are resulting in severe injuries or fatalities. So on this map, and it's a little probably hard for you all to see here, but if you go into the report itself, you can see a little bit more clearly. We've identified the high injury network for vehicular crashes, motorcycle crashes, bicycle crashes, and pedestrian crashes. So that's what the 4 different colors represent on this map. 15 to 20% of the roadway network is represented in the high injury network, but it accounts for 55% of all the fatal crashes in the last 5 years. So you can see that it helps us zoom into where we need to make these types of improvements. I'll just go through this quickly, but this is 4 different maps that show those 4 modes and some statistics about those, as well as the top 5 roadway segments and top 5 intersections associated with that mode. So this is the high injury network for vehicular crashes, the high injury network for motorcycle crashes. You can see that's a little bit more focused. The high injury network for bicycles, again, even more focused than motorcycles. And then for pedestrians, the high injury network. And what was interesting is, and we did some of this in the action plan document, is where those different modes actually overlap. So we need to really concentrate where we see different types of modes interacting. We developed 4 lists of action items, again, going with those 4 pillars that I mentioned earlier. Leadership, so just to highlight a couple, forming a Vision Zero steering committee, so kind of to continue the work of the task force, conduct a Vision Zero workshop more workshops for engineering, planning, and public health staff, and then encouraging local agencies to adopt their own Vision Zero resolutions and action plans. For safer speeds, working with FDOT and the cities to implement best practices for setting target speeds and reducing speed limits. Evaluating resurfacing projects to identify opportunities to do complete streets improvements, head and bike safety implementation, and then encouraging enforcement efforts on the high injury network. So putting the identification of that high injury network into practice by focusing enforcement in those areas. Education. So continue the traffic safety programs that are currently targeting diverse populations, delivering education messages for new roadway designs or traffic control devices with focus on head bike safety. And then with the impending arrival of passenger rail, sharing those rail safety messages with road users. And then lastly, our data-driven approach will be maintaining a safety dashboard and a safety program and Vision Zero web pages on the TPO's website to get that information out, keep it updated, and then incorporating the high injury network into our annual status system report and producing that report annually. So with that, Kim's going to share a little bit about the municipal toolkits.
Okay. Good afternoon. The first thing I'd like to do is kind of echo some of Ryan's comments about the work of the task force. Mr. Blau, Pete, both sitting here in the room, and I don't know if we have anybody online that was on our task force. I'd like to extend my sincere thank you. You guys did a lot of work and in a very short period of time to get us to where we are today. What you're seeing in your, you have the packet of all the action items in your agenda package. The entire Vision Zero action plan is available on our website right now if you wanted to take a look at it. We're very proud of the document itself. It came out, thank the Kittleson team, it came out with a very nice look and we're proud of it. But we had two pieces to what we were doing initially, and this is only the beginning. Today is only the beginning of the real work of what we have to do to make our roads safer. But one piece was to develop the action plan, which are our marching orders, so to speak, about what we need to do. The other piece is how do we get all the agencies that you represent, all the agencies in Brevard County to buy into this as well? Because that's the only way that we're going to make any change is having everybody involved in this. We all have a role. Even as citizens, we have a role. We have to be more mindful of our driving habits. So we also developed a Vision Zero municipal toolkit that will provide agencies with everything they need to get to where we are today. So in that toolkit, they'll find things like branding materials, like our logo and that kind of thing, marketing items, different forms. We'll go through those a little bit. And it's going to be completely online, which is very nice. And we're trying to be nice to the environment too. So the entire thing will be interactive. They'll be able to access it from a mobile device as well if they needed something while they were out in the field or something. So starting, I think it was in June, we ran a 12-week marketing campaign. It was a paid campaign, but it did very well. These were the 5 messages that ran. Anybody see any of these on the website while they were playing on the computer? Yeah, and if you saw them once, then you saw them over and over again. But these 5 messages, when all was said and done, we just got the final report. They were viewed on Facebook. We got 1.7 million impressions, and then on Google we got 1.6 million impressions. So we were very pleased with those numbers. That and I think in all of that, it actually drove just over 11,000 people to our TPO website, or our page as well. So we're pretty happy with that. And pedestrian safety right here in the corner, and the one about stopping on red, those were the 2 biggest ones that people seem to be interested in. There's just some of the numbers. Okay, in the toolkit, there will be things already ready to go. Like I said, we want to make it easy for the agencies to support what we're doing. It's the only way that we make our roads safer is everybody's on board. TPO can only do so much. So there's flyers already ready to go. They can customize. There's all kinds of resolution letters, press releases, a copy of our action plan. We have stuff from the Vision Zero Network, lots of resources on how to build a plan. There's a timeline, and again, they have all of their data, the high injury network that was done for the whole county, so they have the data that they would need to get going. And then, of course, we talked about it being interactive. This is actually just kind of a screenshot of the landing page for the toolkit. It is not active yet. We have a kickoff for that at the end of this month, where we will unveil it to all the municipalities and hopefully bring them on board with us. But you know, I stood up here, Ryan stood up here, and we've spouted an awful lot of numbers to you. But the one thing that we need to remember, and one thing that we've done with traffic safety for so long, is it's always been about numbers. You know, you're just reporting numbers. Oh, we had this many, we're up, we're down, we're this. It's always about numbers. It's not about numbers. It's about people. And at the TPO, we don't have to look very far to find somebody that's been affected by a traffic crash. And you guys all know her, so you're in that too, but you may have somebody in your own family or somebody very closely to you. That's why we have to make a difference. It's for the people, it's not for all those numbers.
Okay, thank you, Kim and Ryan. Does anyone have any questions for either Kim or Ryan? James?
Yes, I do. This is Tony.
1 second, please, Tony.
As far as marketing goes, are you going to put this out as statewide, or is it just our local?
What we talked about today, those are our graphics that we own, and the numbers that I gave you were for our marketing campaign. There is an awful lot of, especially in the areas of pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, because Florida, you know, ranks so high with those type of crashes. Georgiana just mentioned it's National Pedestrian Safety Month. There's stuff coming from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Alert Today Florida. There's all kinds of graphics out there that can be used for.
Well, that's what I was going to get at. As part of the, you know, Florida is so transient and there's so many tourists here. What are we doing to get that word out to either our visitors or new residents to the state of Florida? Because the state of Florida, you know, I see it all the time. People, they don't even know our traffic laws and they have Florida driver's licenses.
Yeah, and education of the traffic laws, I will admit that, especially for pedestrians. I spent 11 years as a police officer in Cocoa Beach and worked crashes, and the only cause of the crash was because the person looked the wrong way, you know, because they're used to cars coming from a different direction. So, you know, that is an issue, and we're always looking for ways to reach them. But I think as a state and as a nation, we realize pedestrian and bicycle safety for sure, even you know, moving up into vehicles too, is a health issue in this country. It's not a traffic issue, it's a health issue. We're killing way too many people. So I think you're seeing more of those standardized messages as well.
Okay, Craig, I believe you had a question.
Yeah. Firstly, I was interested in the node for lighting statistics. Do we know what percent of that was for a fatal or severe crash? As for the speeds, the distracted driving, inexperienced drivers?
I can get you all those detailed numbers.
But it was really more just to point out that most of them were pedestrians. Or
pedestrian crashes were, I think, 10% of all the severe and fatal injuries. So about 65% were just vehicle-on-vehicle crashes.
And then the other thing I had looked at is I noticed later in the presentation of the state of our system, when I looked at the distracted driving statistics over 5 years, it's up 40-something%.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So I guess
that's it. This thing doing it.
Yeah.
Well, we know why. The real question is, what can we do about it?
Yeah. Well, you know, so the state just passed first offense law
Right.
for
So
distracted
now
driving.
it's kind of affected something else.
Yeah, so that's one of the things. I mean, that's, that's just
Well,
now
that-
taking effect.
That's the stick. What's the carrot?
Yeah, I think the advertising, I don't know if you want to go back to those 5 images, the advertising is part of the carrot. So it's making those connections to people who have not yet got into a crash. That is it worth looking at this message?
Are we
Is it
pushing
worth-
that out to the schools? Because I don't think I need it.
Sure.
Mine's Bluetooth, but it seems like we need to push that out to the schools, is my comment.
I know Kim's doing a lot of school outreach as well as part of your education program.
Distraction and speed are probably our 2 biggest contributors to the serious and fatal crashes. What Vision Zero says, we're not, we don't think we're ever going to eliminate crashes, but we can eliminate the most serious and the fatals. They're 100% preventable. We just have to do a better job, and that's all of us. We got to make sure that we have to care about the person in the next car or our own life enough to not pick up that phone. Even, you mentioned Bluetooth, and this is not a knock on you, but there are studies that are out there that will tell you that the conversation is more distracting than holding the phone.
Turn off the radio too.
I sat next in traffic one day, I sat next to a lady that was talking on the phone, and she had Bluetooth, but she was beating the heck out of her steering wheel because she was so mad. So, she obviously was distracted. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
Pete, you had something? You're next, Tony.
There are 4 items in the area of focus. Speed is the engineering problem. No report lighting is the engineering problem. Distracted driving is the legislative problem. And inexperienced drivers, I'd say that's a Department of Education problem. What TPO is good at is engineering problems. So we can really get on the ball on reducing speed limits as a body. As far as the distracted driving and the inexperienced driving, that's a tougher nut to crack because it involves the entity outside our preview and outside of TPO dollars, but they're important. And then the no report lighting, once again, that's an engineering problem. That's something that TPO, through the engineers, they can work on, and we can move forward in that direction. The other 2, the distracted driving and the inexperienced driving, that's a big part of the outreach that we have to do when we visit the municipalities and the state that has tougher laws. And that's pretty much what it is. The engineering is always easier than the legislative, because there's always more of an appetite to do wrong when it comes to legislative bodies. Yeah, than it is the engineering part, and I just wanted to add.
Well, I'm just gonna kind of wrap up what you said, though. It's not just engineering and education, it's all of our problems. Because it might be one of our loved ones that ends up the victim of something.
It's my problem, but I can't do a damn thing about what the Board of Education does. It's a different entity. See, I can come here and run my mouth, but I can't go to the school board and run my mouth. I'm not welcome there. See, that's a different sphere that we have to crack. Engineering is easy because that's all of us. That's people standing up there doing the studies and giving us the information. Passing the laws, that's harder, that's political. And what just happened to 528, you give the politicians something, they can screw it all up. But with that said, there's 2 things that we can work on quick and easy because it's in our preview to do that. The other 2 are, and you're trying, it's in your legislative, that tougher distracted driving, and, but nowhere did I see us approaching inexperienced drivers. I've heard it mentioned, bring back driver's ed. And another thing would be to keep on testing every 16 years, every 20 years, just to make sure that we're all up to date when we get our driving licenses. That's a little bit different than engineering. Once again, that's the legislative body, and I just wanted to clarify that there's a distinct difference between the 2 of them. And yeah, we're all involved in this. We're all up in our necks, over our heads in some of it. And we all want to do right.
It's a cultural change.
Nobody wants to hit a pedestrian. Nobody wants to know what happened to Abby and her dad, but a tragedy there. I felt so bad when I read that. And sorry about that. And especially your reaction. Nobody wants that. And, you know, that's what we're working for. That's what Vision Zero is.
It's a cultural change and it's going to take a while, but I know that this TPO is committed to it. And if we can get the other people in Brevard County committed to it, I think we can make a difference.
Okay, Tony, you had something?
Yes, I did. Thank you. First of all, I just want to start out by thanking Kim and Sarah and all the TPO staff. Just being so on top of this and hands-on. I know, like, coming and meeting me and Cocoa Beach staff at the crosswalks and really working on this thing. And I think we're actually starting to make a difference. I wanted to add as well that some of the things, great input from everybody. And I know, you know, as somebody who's deeply involved in multiple nonprofits, including the Chamber of Commerce and other groups, that we go to seminars, and a lot of times when we're learning how to promote ourselves on social media or otherwise, people way smarter than me talk about exactly what that last slide was talking about, and that is telling a story. And I think that's so important to tell that story, get away from the numbers and talk about our families, our kids, our neighbors, you know, and their kids going over to the beach or riding their bikes or walking on these crosswalks, and how important those items are. So I would commend us, one, for initiating that and get deeper into it, and a suggestion: reach out to some of the nonprofits in our community who would probably very likely share this information through their social media, and we've just exponentially expanded our scope. And I'd be happy to help on that. So anyway, good job, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Peter?
Yeah. In my legislative district, there were, I recall, there were many, but I recall 2 accidents in particular. One, a carload of teenagers and a road that was closed, went through and hit a concrete barrier, and 4 died. Across from my house, a tree got in the way. 2 teenagers hit it, both of them died. So these are really tragic, absolutely tragic. But I'm very interested in what % of all the accidents and fatalities that we have are alcohol and drug related. Do you have statistics?
The number we had, I think it's what's reported is somewhere around 12%. But what gets reported is typically underreported, because if it's suspected but not tested, say in a severe injury case, it may never get tested. And so it may not show up on the crash report. So the number is usually going to be higher than what you can actually pull from the data.
Well, have we done any research into impaired driving in the United States? It doesn't have to be, you know, locally.
Yeah, there's.
And what % of, you know, somebody does a lot of work on, particularly those who are engaged in the research on alcohol and drug abuse. It is far more than 12%.
Yeah, we know it's high enough, it's a problem. And so we've identified it as folks.
Kind of the same with distracted driving. You can't really put your finger on how bad distracted driving is, because if you go to a crash scene, the person driving the car that was at fault is not going to say, oh yeah, I was texting my mom, or I was texting my dad, or whoever right before my crash. They're not going to tell you that. So it's a hard thing to actually cite that as the cause in the accident. You know, the cause is going to be they ran a stop sign, they ran a red light, but it was a distracted driving issue that led that to happen.
Yeah, well, you know, it's common sense that if you know what the degree of alcohol and drug abuse per your population, forget about the car. What % of the population uses alcohol and drugs? Then you can extrapolate and make some reasonable assumptions on how that affects the driving if 12%, 12 out of 100 people that pass you on the road are impaired, that's a lot of impaired people passing you, and that's going to give you accidents. So I think it's a critical factor. I've looked into it before, and I think, if that is indeed a real underlying cause, that should be on the table, and we should be addressing that, alcohol and drug abuse.
Okay, Arlen?
Okay, the law about texting and driving, that you can be pulled over now, I would like to even see that go further. Many of you know I ride a bicycle many miles all the time, and people walking with their cell phone in their hand, and 2 earplugs. I would like to see that be down to 1. People can't hear. I ring the bell, I ring and ring, people can't hear it. People are walking across the street, someone's honking a horn, they can't hear it. And the same thing with someone who's driving a car, if they got 2 earplugs in there, they can't hear other noises or traffic around them. I would just like to see that.
And that is illegal. If you're in a car or on a bicycle, walking, however, the law is not covered. You can have one like a Bluetooth, but you cannot have both ears in a car or on a bicycle.
Okay, I was not aware of that, but that's one area that I would, think is, could be improved on. And also the pedestrians. The pedestrians walking, they don't hear. A lot of times, you're walking up, a sidewalk, at a crosswalk or something, and if they had only one plug in their ear, they could hear a car or a truck coming. They're coming out in front of that vehicle after getting second. So, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, in that case, thank you, Ryan and Kim. I need a motion to adopt the Vision Zero Action Plan.
So move.
Motion by Arlen, second from Peter. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, before we move on, actually, I want to welcome our newest member, Guy Tucker from the city of Melbourne. Welcome to the CAC, Guy. And I apologize for not doing this earlier. Moving on is action item 6B, which is approval of the 2021 legislative priorities and policy position. Georgiana.
I'm going to get up here to present this. So as you know, every year we put forth some draft legislative policy positions and priorities for your consideration. The 2021 Florida legislative session will begin with committee meetings in January, and the full legislative session will begin in March. And each year, the MPOAC, which is the 27 MPOs, the organization from a statewide level, they develop a set of policy positions and they advocate for those positions. And they are written to improve the operations of the MPOs, TPOs, and transportation in Florida in general. So each one of the individual MPOs very much uses the MPOAC policy positions to kind of develop our individual priorities. So in your package, you have a set of draft positions for your consideration. So I would like to run through them real quick. There's not a lot of major changes, but there are a few. The very first section is regarding funding, which we've talked about, and that's very important. The TPO supports state legislation that preserves the transportation funding and provides flexibility of funding to support safety, efficiency, and preservation of the transportation system. And so the different bullets below that are some of the actions. One, index the local option fuel tax. The state tax is adjusted to inflation. However, the local tax is not. So this will allow the municipalities to index their local motor fuel tax, which will provide greater flexibility to fund their transportation needs. Fund the Transportation Regional Incentive Program, TRIP, as a stable and consistent level of $25 million.
250.
TRIP funds, $250 million. TRIP funds have fluctuated due to funds being diverted for non-transportation purposes over the years. And this is, TRIP is state grant funding that requires a 50% match. We have used this funding on Malabar West, the PD&E that's underway right now, which we'll hear about. We've used it on South Babcock. We've used this funding on different sections of the St. John's Heritage Parkway. So it's for regionally significant priorities. This is a very important funding source for the locals and the TPO. The next one is to identify potential revenue replacement sources for the current motor fuel tax, which is no longer able to fully support the current or the future needs of the transportation system. Just exactly what Keith was just talking about. Whether we look at vehicle miles traveled, whether a vehicle is fitted with a device that could capture the mileage that's being traveled, charging alternatively fueled vehicles a fee equal to a fuel tax, raising a sales tax or the gas tax. Something has to be done. And I will say that the TAC this morning felt that that particular bullet should be a little bit more forceful, maybe instead of identify potential revenue, say support potential revenue. So I was going to change the wording of that to just have a little bit more of an impact. This is something that really, we can work on it on the federal side, which AMPO is working on. We need a transportation bill that is going to address this from a federal perspective, but also it can be looked at from a state perspective. What is the state doing about it? So it's extremely important. The next bullet is about earmarks, commonly referred to, legislative appropriations. We need to be careful about that. It's great to get the money, just make sure that you ask for it. If you are going to be talking with a legislator to try and get funding for an important transportation project, make sure it's coming out of the general fund and not the transportation trust fund, because that money is already accounted for. And then the last bullet is expand the charter county surtax to allow municipalities over 150,000 in population, areas to enact up to 1 cent local option surtax, which can be done by referendum. It's just bringing in that additional revenue into Brevard County. The next area is regarding SIS. The TPO supports state legislation that allows the strategic intermodal system funds to be used on roads, transit, and other transportation facilities not designated on the SIS. The SIS are projects like I-95, State Road 528, the Spaceport, Port Canaveral. We have SIS connectors, which is Ellis Road, going from I-95 to the airport. The Florida DOT allocates 75% of its funding to the SIS. These are projects that are considered the backbone of Florida, so to speak. That only leaves 25% of discretionary funding to go on all the other projects that we have on our priority list. So it allows the SIS funds to be used for SIS relievers, so to speak. So this is something the MPOAC has been advocating for years to try and get the department to consider. Support state legislation that establishes flexible and predictable funding levels for transit projects, capital and operating, identified through the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process by removing various funding limitations for the State Transportation Trust Fund. Basically, this removes the distinction between highway and transit. There is not enough money to fund transit, and I think we shouldn't underestimate the critical role that transit plays in moving people. So this is something, there needs to be better flexibility in the trust fund. The next section is the transportation priority is safety. We just talked about the Vision Zero action plan. We need to be focusing in on the safety more. The TPO supports state legislation that regulates distracted driving by prohibiting the handheld use of electronic wireless communication devices and other similar distracting devices while operating a motor vehicle on any roadway. We just talked about that. Arlen mentioned it. We know that texting while driving is a primary offense. And then the very beginning of 2020 in January, Florida drivers are not allowed to hold cell phones in their hands if they're in a work zone or a school zone, which was fantastic. So this takes it a step further. And I think that is exactly what we need to try and move forward here in Florida. The next one is support state legislation that increases funding to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety awareness programs, facility improvements, and seeks to reduce bicycle and pedestrian injuries and fatalities statewide. As you know, Brevard County ranks number 3 in the nation for pedestrian fatalities. You know, we do ourselves such a disservice by being at the top of that list. You know, we talk about the data may be somewhat skewed because of how they analyze it from the Smart Growth America and National Complete Streets Coalition report. But there's no question we have a problem. And so changes in Florida law, along with other crash reduction efforts, is really going to help us. And so we really needed to have that, I think, on our legislative priorities since we've adopted a Vision Zero action plan. So this is a new one that we have added. On the next page, the next one is support state legislation that increases the efficiency and safety of the existing transportation systems by maximizing the deployment and advanced innovative transportation technologies. So we know that transportation technologies are advancing in ways that's really going to transform the industry and potentially how we move and between, you know, how we move between our metropolitan areas. So, you know, if we're talking about transportation network companies such as Uber or Lyft, automated and connected vehicles, advanced transit systems, you know, the TPO needs to support and encourage the legislature to continue establishing state laws and funding mechanisms to support the development and the implementation of these technological advances. Because cities and states that are proactive in the deployment of this technology will be better positioned for success and economic stability in the future. So then we go to our additional position, and we had this one on here last year, support state legislation that establishes guidelines to promote project streamlining, allowing for quicker and more efficient project delivery, thereby saving time and money. And I think Mr. Fuskis, this was his brainchild, and I think it's very, very important. I know this is something that MPOAC, even though they do not have it on their legislative priorities, they have been actively working with DOT central office to try and streamline some of the processes. One comment that came from the PAC was that someone felt like it would be good to add resiliency, to take a look at the resiliency aspect in the planning process. I'm not so sure that it belongs in this particular one. Perhaps maybe we need to have another bullet to kind of make sure that the department is considering resiliency in the planning process. You know, they do have a, they have resiliency incorporated in the Florida Transportation Plan and the SIS policy plan. They're starting to develop training, a sea-level scenario sketch planning tool. So the department is starting to do things regarding resiliency. I think no doubt we need to come together and we need to have more meetings and we need to talk about it. But I'm not so sure that it really belongs in this particular one. Perhaps we maybe we do a bullet to kind of reiterate that we are supportive of resiliency in the transportation planning process. And then that brings us to the end, which is about our transportation priorities. We have our surface transportation list. Now, this is not all of our priorities, but these are the big ones at the top of the list. Ellis Road widening, the 528 widening, the replacement of the 401 bridges over the Canaveral Barge Canal, the A1A multimodal corridor projects, and then support transportation priorities for all modal agencies. And, you know, the Orlando Melbourne International Airport, we support connections from 105, access the widening of Ellis Road to Wickham, expand Port Canaveral's passenger and freight capacity, invest in space transportation infrastructure, continue to support the construction of the Indian River Bridge replacement and Space Commerce Way connector, and establish passenger rail in Brevard County. Continue the DOT and private sector investment in the quiet zones, and one or more passenger rail stops in Brevard County, which we are hopeful as the service from Miami to Orlando gets up and running in the future, 3 to 5 years down the road, that we will benefit from the train coming through Brevard County, which is, we don't want to just weigh that as it goes by. We want to have some benefit to that as well. So get your thoughts and feedback on what we have here. Did we miss something? Any changes you would like to consider?
Thank you, Georgiana. Pete?
Yeah, I'd like to get back to funding and expand charter of county and regional transportation. The counties are going to get the same hit that the state is on lack of funding. And there's almost emergency level that they're able to get more money. Now, a referendum in Brevard County seems like an impossible task. Referendum, if that language could possibly be changed to supermajority, it might stand a better chance of getting money that's sorely needed. This isn't for extras anymore. This is just to stay where we are.
I will say that we have heard 2 times now that the local option gas tax may be coming up for discussion in front of the county commission after the election early next year, which will be good.
But to give it to us as a referendum, that's a high hurdle. If they could vote on it supermajority, it might stand a better chance.
Yeah, good
And
point.
like I said, it's no longer to even get caught up. It's just tread water and stay where we are.
Okay, Greg?
Also funding. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bullets. 3 of them have to do with increasing taxes. The horse is out of the barn. It's the growth that we're trying to catch up with. So how can we get the growth to pay for the demand they're putting on our transportation system?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that's where one of the TPO's, the board's strategic areas is linking the land use and transportation component. So there needs to be a connection there. When we just adopted our long-range transportation plan, one of our next areas of focus is to take our LRTP and go and meet with each one of the individual municipalities, sit down with them and talk about all of our plans and make sure that their comp plans and our long-range plans, that the policies are connecting, that we have that connection. We don't approve or deny development. We just have to deal with the impacts of it after it's been put in. So we do need to make that connection, have better coordination with our local governments, and that is going to be an area that we're going to be focusing on. That's the next step of our LRTP development, really, and to sit down with them and kind of talk about all of our different plans, the bike and mobility plan, the Vision Zero action plan, the ITS master plan, so we can tie that all together with each one of the cities and the county to make sure that we can plan more efficiently.
I did some work with some folks from over in Europe, and the railroads over there, they were very segmented and they had different standards. And what they had to do was they had to pull all of the different railroad systems together to get them talking under one roof, and it was all IT based. So it was, the train control systems, the signal systems, and all of that. So, but it seems like maybe we need to do something like that. But again, the funding seems to be the problem, and it's getting worse, not better, especially here in the short term. So, I think we need to come up with a way of having this exponential growth fund their impact to our transportation system.
Okay.
I look forward to the upcoming discussions.
All right, thank you, Martin.
I would say that I'm absolutely pro-growth, but the problem that I do have is the existing residents, I'm talking about all infrastructure, not just transportation. They end up paying for it, and the recipients of the infrastructure don't. They pay for maybe the next wave. So there's some connection that has to be done to make that not the case.
Pete?
I moved out of the Orlando area in the early 1990s, and they had impact fees on their roads forever. Traffic still went to hell. So impact fees by themselves, even though they might have helped a little, didn't even scratch the surface to address the amount of traffic that they have in that area now. So if you're looking to properly fund infrastructure, it's not just the new residents that have to dig in their pocket. I remember we had 7 million people in Florida. My first construction project was the B-line on 441, past a mall there now, and I could get downtown in 35 minutes. Now it takes an hour and a half. It's growth doesn't pay for itself. Everybody has to pay for it. So we all have to dig in our pocket. We haven't been keeping up with infrastructure. We said, well, impact fees might help, but they haven't. So here it is. It's not 1970 anymore. It's 2020. We're in a deep hole. There's a tremendous amount of money that needs to even get us thinking about getting caught up. There isn't enough land available to get caught up, and that's the situation we're in now. I agree growth causes the problem, but you know, we breathe. All of it isn't outsiders moving in, a lot of it is us reproducing. But you know, the fact is that as our population increases, yeah, there's more of a demand on transportation. How do we pay for it? We have to dig in our pocket and pay more taxes. That's the only way out. And there's not a climate to ever dig in your pocket and pay more taxes. There's always a lot of resistance and a lot of fighting. So how do we overcome that? We say impact fees, that's not going to cut it. That'll be a little Band-Aid. So unless we really swallow the bullet and say, hey, let's add a 5% payroll sales tax on infrastructure, and that'll never happen. We're never going to get caught up and get deeper and deeper in the hole.
Well, you have a very good point, because we're never going to really keep up with the demand. And so I think we do need to be looking at mobility options. You know, not everyone agrees with the passenger rail that is coming through. But for Florida, that is huge. And especially with the tourism, with the people that are moving into Florida every single day, that is going to be so important. And that's why I think it's so important for Brevard County that we get a station. But we need to be looking at mobility across the board, other different ways of moving around, because there is no way we're going to keep up with the demand. It takes years and years and years to fund these expensive transportation projects.
One other
You good? Go ahead.
With mobility and financing is, what is the position on government or financing government projects versus financing privately funded projects or commercial projects?
Well, I think there should be a place for private funding in the fabric of transportation. So I think that, you know, we need more private money coming in, which is another reason why Brightline was so out of the box, because it's 100% privately funded. There's no state or federal money on it. And we need to be looking at what the private sector can bring to the table. That's the only way some of these projects. I'm sorry.
It is costing us money.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Costing the taxpayer money.
That's right.
Okay, are there any virtual comments, Sarah?
Yes, Tony.
Tony?
Yes,
Go ahead, Tony.
thank you. Hi. Couple of things. One, I agree with Georgiana on the planning. I think that's so smart to get with the municipalities, having been with the municipality, they really aren't thinking about, as they expand their growth and other things, the transportation. And I think that's really good to coordinate that. So that's number one. Number two, I wanted to ask, Georgiana, you had mentioned that TAC added a little bit of language to strengthen the funding piece. Would you like that from us as well? And if so, I'll be happy to make that motion.
Sure, that would be great. There really, wasn't a definitive suggestion, just for me to kind of play around with the language of that particular one to identify or support additional potential revenue replacement sources for the current motor fuel tax. So absolutely, that would be great.
I would make that motion and ask you to please do that.
Sounds great.
I'll second.
Okay,
Kohler.
we have a second from Adam. Any further discussion on Tony's motion? All in favor, say aye.
Restate the motion.
Yeah, would you restate the motion, please, Tony?
Actually, I think Georgiana did it better than I did, if you don't mind, Georgiana.
That you would approve the draft legislative priorities with the caveat of identify or make the language concerning the potential revenue replacement sources a little bit more definitive, a little bit more actionable words such as support. So I will play around with that language to do that.
That was exactly, thank you.
In your wording.
Well done.
All right, so that's the motion to approve the legislative priorities with the recommended change to strengthening the third bullet under funding. David.
Do we currently have any way to capture any tax revenue from these Tesla charging stations? But the gas is going to become less and less an issue. In the future, it's going to become more electric. How do we tax the electric?
From the charging stations, I don't know. Interestingly, the DOT did, they're planning to do a charging, statewide charging.
So I believe other states have to pay a registration fee if their electric vehicle, when they renew their tag every year. I believe Florida might have something like that. That's a little extra, but it certainly doesn't cover the amount that they have in tax collection.
So the thing you're thinking about the gas tax, we can't rely on the gas tax. It's going to go away. It's going to become less and less and less. So it becomes not a non-issue. So we have to depend on some sort of energy tax and or some way to tax the vehicles that travel on roads rather than just the energy tax.
Yeah, there's a few other states doing vehicle miles traveled taxes, so people would only pay for the miles that they actually drive. So. But that's something that's a nationwide issue, and hope to get some direction, from the federal government level and
yes,
how that proceeds in the future.
We are hoping with the new federal transportation bill, and of course we just got to stop. It was due to expire at the end of September. It's expired, but the president has funded a stopgap, so he's extended it for a year. But in the new legislation, the new 5-year bill, we are hopeful there's going to be something in there that is going to address this issue from a federal perspective.
Okay, thank you, Georgiana.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up is our Malabar Road PD&E presentation.
This also I have to yell
Yeah.
myself. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jack Freeman. I'm with Kittleson and Associates. Kittleson is conducting the Malabar Road PD&E on behalf of the city of Palm Bay. And I'd like to give you an update on what's happening with the project. We conducted a virtual public meeting on September 24th. We'll show you some of the slides that we have from that presentation and just give you an update with the project overall. This project is being funded through a local agency program. It's using, it allows it the project to use federal funds. It's being administered by the city of Palm Bay. It must be approved by FDOT. It falls under the guidance of an agreement between Federal Highway Administration and FDOT to allow for FDOT to actually approve the document. I'll read you the wording here because it is a required part of this. The environmental review, consultation, and other actions required by applicable federal environmental laws for this project are being and have been carried out by the Florida Department of Transportation pursuant to 23 USC section 327 and the Memorandum of Understanding dated December 14th, 2016, executed by the Federal Highway Administration and FDOT. So basically, this allowed FDOT to review and approve the environmental documentation for this project. So we're in this PD&E study process, the project development and environment process. We are currently right here with that, which is the alternative development and evaluation process of the project. So we've gotten some of the data collection done. We've done most of the traffic analysis. That's complete. We conducted the alternatives public meeting. The public comment period for that meeting closes today. So if you care to make any comments, you can download a comment form off the website and mail it as long as it's postmarked today. It's good to go. It will be accepted. We'll go in and do alternative refinement and get heavy into the environmental analysis and further engineering analysis, prepare a preliminary engineering report, prepare the environmental documentation known as a type 2 categorical exclusion, go to public hearing, get the document approved. So that's basically the process that we're following and going through with this PD&E study. The purpose and need for the project is really based upon two primary factors, and that is roadway capacity, being able to meet future transportation demand that's in the corridor and meet existing demand that's in the corridor, and also safety and looking at the safety issues. And I'll talk about these in more detail in just a minute. It's also enhancing from a multimodal perspective and being able to put additional headed bike facilities into the corridor. And it's looking at what we call system linkage to be able to enhance the connection to the St. John's Heritage Parkway and be able to improve the access to that once the parkway is completed and wraps around to connect into I-95. So, and then planning consistency. That's an important part of the project. This project is funded for the PD&E. It's shown in the long-range transportation plan that's been adopted, but it is not funded for the next phase, which is final design. To get the environmental document approved, it needs to be funded for final design. So that is part of the requirements that we have to go through. It has to be met. Okay. There we go. So let's talk a little bit about traffic. You see 2020 traffic that was counted in January, so we got it in before everything shut down, so to speak, from COVID-19, and we've done traffic projections for 2050. And quick math shows you that basically those traffic projections are more or less doubling between now and 2050 with the connection. And this is also the 2050 projections were done considering the St. John's Heritage Parkway in and connected around from Malabar Road around to Babcock. So that part is considered to be in. It's part of the evaluation. We're seeing levels of service in the future year based upon it staying 2 lanes is level of service E and F throughout the corridor. E from Crasner over to Jupiter. The remainder of the corridor would be F in 2050 as a 2-lane facility. Looking at safety and evaluating safety, you can see by the green line and how the green line is increasing as it goes up. Crashes, this is 5 years from 2015 to 2019. Crashes have been steadily increasing over that period of time. Fortunately, no fatalities in the corridor, but what we are seeing is a fairly slight increase of serious injury type crashes over the 5-year time period. So we are seeing an increase in crashes and an increase in serious injury crashes. Come on, I got too many. Typical sections. So we're looking at 2 basic improvements along this corridor. One is what we call the minimal right-of-way, which is following the guidance that is out in the Florida Green Book for local roadways. This is a local roadway, and being able to do that. Some of the features of this typical section include a 10-foot shared use path here that would be on the north side of the roadway, 2 11-foot lanes in each direction, 15.5-foot wide median, which is a minimum width median allowed underneath the Florida Green Book and the local design guidelines. You will notice it does not have any buffered bike lanes because we are showing a 10-foot shared use path on the north side. Recent changes in Florida design guidance and FDOT design guidance is that if you have a roadway that's 35 miles per hour or greater, you do not have to have both a shared use path and buffered bike lanes. You can do one or the other. So we have chosen to do the shared use path. It's on the north side. And as you get to the east of the canal, the C20 canal, or C10 canal, excuse me, you have the C20 canal paralleling. So you don't have that many driveways and access points on the north side. So it's a much more pleasurable ride. I ride about 70 miles a week myself on my bike, so I would enjoy this type of facility where I don't have to worry about driveways and somebody hitting me coming out of a driveway. So, that is one of the features of the 2 11-foot lanes, a 6-foot concrete sidewalk along the south side that's tucked tight up against the back of the curb. So what's the difference between this and the next one? Well, alternative B goes in, same basic features here. The only difference is it's got a 22-foot wide median here. And that's a little bit better than the 15.5-foot wide median because with medians, we're going to have U-turn movements. And with the U-turn movements, that additional, 6.5, 7 feet just allows that much more for that U-turn movement, better facilitates that U-turn movement throughout. And we'll have bulb outs along the corridor to also help for larger vehicles and trucks with trailers and different things like that. But the 22-foot wide median helps. We also have this 4-foot grassy strip, a little bit buffer between the back of the curb and the sidewalk along the south side. So it totals up to about 10 feet additional right-of-way. That's the real differences between the two. Now, one thing you'll say, well, why is this one wider than this? Well, we've got a guardrail here that is between the shared use path and the C20 canal. We have criteria that we have to meet. C20 canal is always wet. We have to meet certain criteria, so that's guardrail protected along there to be able to keep a car from going in there and somebody drowning. So those are the different features of the 2 different alternatives. Let's talk a little bit about money. We've talked a lot about money already. Well, this one's not cheap to
Wait a
do
minute,
either.
Pete.
Yes, sir.
We'll get to that.
It's a little difficult, I don't want to get.
All right, go ahead, Pete.
Because I'm really confused. When you call this a local street, I always was taught that roadway classifications are local, collector, arterial. Now, a local being residential with houses, and then a collector would pick up that traffic and then eventually would lead us to arterial. When I see a 4-lane divided highway and somebody gives the local classification, it confuses me. Can you help me out here and, show me there?
Certainly. By local means, it follows Florida Green Book criteria. Florida Green Book criteria has been set up by cities and counties to be applicable to local roadways, city and county roadways, whether they're subdivision streets or they go out to, a major local roadway that is not part of the state highway system. That's considered as a local street. This is really a local street that follows Florida Green Book criteria. So it's a separate document that's published with cities and counties and FDOT working together. The desirable criteria, which is alternative B, follows the FDOT design manual, what we call the FDM. So that is the applicable criteria if this were on the state highway system and what we have to do.
So the green book, if it's in a municipality, it really doesn't matter what the use is, as long as the ownership is county or city, it's considered a local road. If it's state-owned, then the classification is totally different.
The classification and the design guidance that we have to follow is different for a state highway than for a local road.
And then within the municipality, what they call local collector and arterial is different than the green.
Yeah, different than what I'm referring to. From a design standpoint, it is that criteria.
Now, the second question I have is you show a 6-foot sidewalk with green space.
Right.
And then you show the same 6-foot sidewalk adjacent to the curb. Shouldn't that be 7 foot adjacent to the curb?
No, sorry, it used to be, it's actually 5 foot in the low.
If you're using a 6-foot minimum, which apparently you are.
Yeah.
Should you add a foot next?
In Florida Green Book, it is 5 foot unless it's against the back of the curb, and then you go 6 feet. Okay. In FDOT guidance, it is wider if it's up against the back of the curb, but typically we don't, in FDOT design guidance, we don't typically like to put it up against the back of the curb. Sometimes you don't have a choice.
Well, the standards, they took away the minimum. They used to show a minimum in the standards, but that's no longer there, because it varies.
Right.
So it's a designer choice. And you know, once again, this is confusion because you show 6 foot with green strip, then you show the same 6 foot adjacent to the curb. And usually for safety reasons, you put an extra foot concrete next to the curb. And I don't want to see safety cut out. So if you're using a 6-foot sidewalk, for safety, it should be 7 foot next to the curb. And it's just the way I look at it.
Let me get into the next slide, because for the minimal amount of money difference between alternative A and alternative B, you know, my opinion is we're much better off with B, because not only what you're talking about with the buffer lane, but also for the U-turns as well, and be able to facilitate U-turns, because 15.5 foot median is small for that too. So kind of led me into this next slide, and talking about cost and what are the costs associated with this project. And what I've done is always have a no build. That stays a viable alternative in any PD&E study until we're done with public hearing. So that's always there. Okay, so we're looking at 2 different alternatives, A and B. Here's what we do: traffic signals at all the major intersections, or the second alternative is 5 locations. We're considering roundabouts, and what happens if we look at roundabouts. So the cost with traffic signals, okay, for A is like, 83.7, 85.3, so it's about 1.5, 1.6 million more costly to build alternative B than alternative A. Okay, and you get the benefit of the wider median, you get the benefit of the buffer bike lanes, you also have a little bit more right-of-way requirements as well. When you start looking at the cost differential between with and without roundabouts, and you put those roundabouts in, you're looking at about 10 million more for adding in roundabouts. Now, I'm a roundabout proponent. I like roundabouts, but that's costly. And you're looking at 96 million here, a difference of about 11 million. So you are looking at more cost when you put in roundabouts there. And the primary reason for that is because the C20 canal is along the north side. When we start shifting and we start doing things with the C20 canal, we've got a lot more box culverts that we're putting into that canal to be able to get for the footprint of that roundabout around there. So that's one of the primary reasons that we have, and it's just a little bit more pavement as we deal with it as well. Some other factors to consider. The levels of service and the improved levels of service we get out of roundabouts is a bit better throughout the corridor. We will get better levels of service throughout the corridor when we start installing roundabouts along there. And you can see it's a slight improvement based upon the top line. The safety improvement is rather significant. First of all, we've compared 2 lanes to 4 lanes. What happens in future traffic conditions if we keep it as 2 lanes versus we go to 4 lanes? And that's shown right here. We'll have about 35 to 40% more crashes if we stay at 2 lanes than if we go to 4 lanes. That's just because we've got a lot more conflict. There's nothing separating out the left turn lanes. There's nothing doing anything with it. If we stay within no build and keep it the way it is today, you will continue to see growth in crashes along that corridor as traffic increases. Change it to 4 lanes, it'll help mitigate that. So if you want to look now at what happens if we put roundabouts in there, well, roundabouts will have about 10% fewer crashes or total crashes than traffic signals at the 5 locations we're looking at, about 10% fewer crashes. But in the way of serious injuries and fatalities, it'll be about 45% fewer crashes. So roundabouts, because they require you to go 20 to 25 miles per hour through that circulating roadway, it is a lot lower on percent of serious crashes and fatalities. So you will see quite a bit of reduction in that, particularly serious crashes, because we haven't had any fatalities out there in 5 years. So we're doing really good on fatality-wise. So another factor to mention is there's really no significant environmental issues. We've done some species surveys. We're not seeing anything that's of great concern. We've got some hazmat locations, but we can take care of that. There's really nothing serious out there from an environmental standpoint. So we are currently just having completed the alternative public workshop, wrapping up comments today. We'll get in there. We started working on some of the documentation for the project. We're working on that. We'll continue to do that and prepare final documents, come up with a recommended preferred alternative, and we're scheduled to go to public hearing about a year from now. I'm looking at it sometime late summer of next year and being able to wrap the project up in the winter of 2022. And there's a lot of information if you care to go there. It's in your handout as far as the website information. The website's here as well. We've got concept drawings. We've got the public meeting handout. We've got a whole host of different information that's available for you. And again, if you want to make a comment for the record, it's there too. You can make a comment. It just needs to be postmarked by the end of the day, or you can email it to me and that'll suffice it as well. So any questions?
Adam.
On page 97, where you talk about cost, you're right away. What are those projected on? What year?
Okay. Okay, couple things. We've got, what we did was we actually went in, there's 94 parcels impacted by this project. Okay, now that doesn't include, these right-of-way costs do not include yet the alternative pond location. So we'll have to add more money. So it'll go up a little bit from here. But yeah, there are 94 parcels, of which 29 the city of Palm Bay already owns. They have been acquiring property along this corridor for a right good while. And there's a lot of setbacks already put into the right-of-way along this corridor for widening to the south side. So the right-of-way acquisition is really rather small. We're looking at about 11, 12 acres total. I think I've got the total on this slide. No, I took it off. Okay, but it's about 11 to 12 acres overall. And because the city owns, again, a substantial part, the city did that, right-of-way department did that estimate. We actually went through and said, we're taking this many square feet or this many acres of this parcel and gave them the parcels, and they went through and estimated based upon that.
Right, but the question that I asked, that you haven't addressed yet, so pardon me for being so blunt. What year are you basing those figures on? You got $1.5 million to $2 million. What year are you thinking?
They're based on current prices, just
current.
everything up there is based on current prices.
That's not realistic, because We got a project right now that we just talked about a little while ago. They're talking about building in 2030. Well, prices are gonna definitely go up with it, so shouldn't you be using a year group like 2040 instead of 2020? Sorry.
You got a valid point, and I
Thank
agree
you.
with what you're saying,
I wanna be-
but the customary way that it is done is based upon current prices.
I know the customary way. I'm asking, should we be considering a different way to address this? That's all.
Yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
one.
Yeah, Pete,
Jack, I'm looking at the level of service with roundabouts, without roundabouts. It almost appears to me that with the roundabouts, you have a widening already happening with the roundabouts. They almost has an effective lane of traffic. Without the roundabouts, you already have a couple intersections at level of service D and one at E. So it looks like a road widening will be in the very near future, just to keep the capacity of the road. So by adding a roundabout, it's almost like it's an effective 3 lanes in each direction instead of 2, based on the traffic flow. So do you think that the city of Palm Bay is going to spend an extra $10 million for all the benefits of roundabouts?
I'm going to stay away from your second part of the question, because I have no idea. You know, we haven't, I will say this, we haven't discussed it yet, okay? But the first part is, everything is, the analysis you're seeing that I put up here, no, it's right here. That's all based upon 2050 traffic. So that's looking at it from a 2050 traffic perspective with the roadway widened to 4 lanes and being able to go through there. So that, that you are getting improved traffic flow with the roundabout. That's not surprising. It's pretty typical of what we see with roundabouts, is that they will typically be about a 1 level of service grade above what we see, with the traffic signal. But it also has to do with the distribution of traffic coming into the roundabout. The higher that volume is on the side street approaches coming in, the closer the traffic signal will perform to the roundabout. Okay?
So at some point, on traffic volume, you say even out, is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying is, in fact, we got 4 lanes along the east-west roadway, right? And we got a volume along the east-west roadway. The north-south roadway, let's say at Jupiter, which is one of the major intersections, starts to approach that east-west volume, we'll start seeing that roundabout break down because there's less gaps for that traffic to get into.
Yeah, I can understand that you need a gap to get in.
Right.
And if you have heavy through-fare traffic, you're not going to get a gap from, even though it says yield all the way around, I can see that happening. Well, the red light, you'd be at capacity anyway.
It could be, yeah.
Right, I mean, so either way, you're screwed.
Yeah. Roundabouts will give you a longer duration, and they will give you a better, better quality from a safety standpoint. Yes, sir.
Have you thought about a hybrid, like say, maybe Heritage Parkway and Malabar, as far as a roundabout, keep lights, some of the other less traffic intersections like that, Craft Center?
We are looking at every location we look at a roundabout, we're also looking at trucks. So Krasner is one that we did look at the roundabout on, but we also looked at the traffic safety. So, we are looking at those combinations, and so it's kind of, plug and play. We can go with either way, whether it be a roundabout or a signal. One of the things that, is concerning me about this corridor is, if you live in Palm Bay, it's as straight as an arrow, okay? There is nothing in there to naturally slow somebody down. I got a high school on the western end, I got an interstate on the eastern end, okay? And, that corridor is set up to be, it's going to have some speed on it, okay? And roundabouts do slow speeds down. If you go through the roundabout at 20 to 25 miles per hour, you're slowing it down. So if I have a roundabout at Palm Bay Parkway, another one at Krasner, another one, on down, there, it is going to help slow speeds through that corridor. You know, a little, it's still going to pick back up, but, you know, kids are going to be kids, it's still, it's going to slow it down.
So just to comment, that plays into the Vision Zero earlier on. Like, you have $10 million in saving people's lives. That's more important.
And one fatality according to the FTAT is 10 million.
Really?
The FTAT design manual, it is 10 million. One fatality.
That's interesting. Appreciate that.
So, Greg?
Yes, Jack.
Yes, sir.
A quick education, AADT.
Average annual daily traffic. Excuse me.
Okay, average annual daily traffic. Okay, so real quick, I'm looking at your traffic map. Not that I ever thought in this fight. I live in Cocoa. East of Meekum Road, your 2020 to 2050, your traffic count's the same. West of St. John's Heritage Parkway, it's not double, it's like triple. I look at the map, there ain't nothing out there but wetlands. What's going on?
Yeah.
What's going on?
Okay, to answer your east one first. Okay, one of the main reason that that's happening is the improved network with the St. John's Heritage Parkway. Because in 2020, we don't have the St. John's Heritage Parkway built from Malabar Road wrapping around to Babcock. It's not there, okay? And with that, but in 2050, the volumes are done and modeled based upon the presence of the St. John's Heritage Parkway. So you're getting traffic that's diverting, you know, to the St. John's Heritage Parkway and going away from it, coming down, you know, Jupiter's got will be extended down and tie into it. So there's that traffic that's getting diverted away and not going toward 95, it's going to St. John's Heritage Parkway around, down to 95 that way, another way. So there, you know, the model is probably just to the west of St. John's Heritage Parkway. You know, the gentleman says, yeah, right now, that's what's happening. Is you're getting a little bit of traffic, you know, a little bit more development to the west, just going out into those environmental lines. Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just for insight, a half mile north of Malabar Road on the St. John's Heritage Parkway, there's a developer doing the site work right now for 450 homes. Just to give you an idea, and that's probably only 3% of the land between there
I
and
suspect
192.
I suspect the growth will not happen to the west of that north-south canal between the old farmland and the floodplain.
Yeah, it should be a lot of them.
Okay, folks, we need to move along. Are there any virtual comments, Sarah?
I'd like to make a comment.
No virtuals.
All right, thank you. Peter?
Yeah, are all the costs itemized here, current costs, not future?
Current cost, not future.
Okay. And the roadway is about 4 miles?
Yes, sir.
Why does it take 3 years or close to 3 years to finish the design?
Well, design probably can be done in about 2 years. Okay. You know,
Okay.
are you asking about why does it take so long to finish the study?
PD&E started back
PD&E will
in
be finished
2019.
in about another 15 months or so.
Do you have a breakdown of the design cost?
No, the design cost right now is.
How was it estimated?
It was estimated as a percentage of construction.
Oh, okay, so as a percent of construction.
It's just basically a percent of construction. It includes all the survey and final design costs. It's a typical percentage.
Okay. If I have detailed questions, can I feel free to call you?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one comment.
Okay.
In addition to this, I'm president of the board of directors of the Melbourne-Tillman Water Control District. Our engineering and our district management has expressed some concerns about the 10-foot wide shared use path and the guardrail as far as inhibiting our ability to access to maintain our right of way. I don't know if you've heard from their engineering yet.
Talked to Mike.
You spoke to Mike, right? So he's reflected our concerns to you about our right of way.
And we've we actually changed it from very wall to guardrail at my.
Because of those purposes, great,
because-
okay.
But he
I
wanted,
just wanted to bring that
Yeah.
up, thank you.
we had very wall in there first, and he said, no, too hard for us to work with.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. Okay, great, thank you.
May
Right,
May I ask super quick?
Georgiana.
Sure.
Did I hear you say that these costs have not been shared with Palm Bay yet?
No, they've been shared with
They've been
Palm Bay.
shared. Okay.
But what I'm saying is, we haven't gotten into discussion of whether we're going to do roundabouts or.
Gotcha, okay.
We're waiting to see what public comments is.
Yeah.
I'm trying to schedule that meeting now.
I tell you, when I saw them, Laura and I both, it was like sticker shock because, this is an off-system roadway. And I know that Palm Bay would like to have some federal money to try and get this project done, especially the design phase. But the design costs are very high, much higher than what we originally thought. But as you said, it's a percentage of the construction, which is how DOT measures it. But, this is kind of leads into the discussion we had previously. And it's an off-system project. You have to use federal money on off-system projects unless it's TRIP or SCTPO. That requires a 50% match, that somebody's got to match on the local side. And there's just not enough money to go around because the DOT typically uses their federal money on state roads, not on projects off the state highway system. That's not always the case, but that's the way it's been for a while now. So we do have some challenges with trying to get this thing funded, but it's a much needed project. So I offer that for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to answer yours, I similarly had that. So what we did was we checked it against Babcock, because they're very similar.
Yeah.
And we're in the same
Yes.
price per mile.
South Babcock is
Babcock.
another perfect example of how do we get it done? How do you do that?
But the other part of this is that this is estimated using DOT's long-range estimating system, because that's what you use for PD&E studies.
Yeah.
And you're using DOT cost, okay? So it's built by local government, it may go down.
Exactly. If you want to federalize it, that's the cost of doing business. And that's where the price gets jacked up.
Peter, I think you had an additional follow-up question.
Yeah, on the other end of Malabar Road, there's another project that's underway. And that's 3.5 miles versus 4 miles. And that's about $93 million total. And, but on the other end, there's just a short period of distance that has 3-lane highway, and then on the other end is a 4-lane, and everything in the middle is still 2-lane. And 93 for 3.5 miles versus 93 for 4 miles for 4 lanes. And it is my intent to take those two projects and compare them, how they're analyzed and how they're weighted. But I need help.
Okay.
I think the biggest difference there might be the cost of acquisition right away. I think that's a big part of it. Which, that's the point I want to make. We're comparing Babcock to the Malabar Road project. But we're way ahead as far as acquiring right away on the Malabar Road project as opposed to Babcock.
Right. But when we compared it, we compared construction cost only. I did not include right away.
Right away,
And that's
yeah.
what you should do, because right away, when you get into right away, you could get into one parcel that would be just throw everything out of socket. I mean, it's just the way it works.
Well, I'd like to see the details of the right of way on the other end.
Okay, I don't, because of the way right-of-way laws work, I got one number. So I can show you the takings, but I can't show you the cost per acre, because I don't want to have that.
I've been down that road.
When I get inquiries from, attorneys, I don't have it.
I know your attorneys called me.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Freeman. Okay, moving along, our next issue is the 2019 State of the System.
Harrison. I'm with Wilson and Associates as well, and I'm presenting the results of the 2019 State of the System report. So today I'll give you a brief summary about what the SOS is, why we conduct the SOS, the countywide trends that we saw in 2019, and then a summary of the corridor and safety analysis that we did in 2019 as well. So what is the SOS? It's an annual evaluation of Brevard County's transportation network. We look at roadways, transit, the seaport, airport, and spaceport. And we monitor transportation factors like safety, mobility, congestion, freight, and tourism. So why do we conduct the SOS? Well, it provides technical guidance to the TPO, and it helps identify where federal and state dollars should be spent. Moving on, we'll have a quick discussion about the trends that we saw countywide in 2019. One thing I want to note again is that this is the 2019 SOS report. Obviously, COVID-19 has had a dramatic impact on all of our lives and also on Brevard County's transportation network, but those impacts are not shown in this report. When we do the 2020 report next year, we'll see those impacts there, and we'll discuss that in more detail then. That being said, moving on, for 2019, we saw the highest countywide population growth since 2005. This was also met with an increase in traffic volumes on Brevard County roadways. Now, we did see about a 15% decrease in overall transit ridership. We talked with Space Coast Area Transit about this, and they identified several trends that may be a part of that. First of all, lower gas prices, an increased use of rideshare services like Uber and Lyft, as well as more specifically here in Brevard County, Hurricane Dorian shutting down service for several days in, I think, September of 2019. Additionally, it took a little bit of time for that service to come back up after the storm. So that may be part of why that number decreased by that amount. Finally, we have the Orlando Melbourne International Airport, and so that continued to see a good upward trend in passengers. So we saw about a 10% increase from 2015 to 2019. Moving on, at Port Canaveral, we saw a 20% increase in cruise passengers from 2015 to 2019, and about a 50% increase in cargo tonnage over that same period. Finally, for space missions at Cape Canaveral, we saw it stay about the same from 2015 to 2019, a slight decrease, but obviously we've had a lot of really significant launches out there in the past couple of years. Elon Musk got to put a car in space, and we saw manned space flight this year, so a lot of really exciting things are still happening at Cape Canaveral. All right, moving on, we have our corridor and safety analysis. Now, this is really the heart of the SOS report. What we do is we take a lot of the major roadways in Brevard County and divide them up into specific corridors, and then we can look at transportation metrics like traffic congestion and safety on specific corridors and really hone in and see how each corridor is performing. Being said, we'll start with a couple high-level corridor metrics. First of all, as you look to the right, you can see that we have a lot of green downward arrows. We have a lot of good trends overall. At the top of the list, you can see roadway miles with congestion. That's gone down from 2018. As we move on, you see annual transit ridership. We already talked about that, but that did go down. Hopefully, we can see that rebound in the coming years. Next on the list is the percent of roadways with existing ped and bike facilities. Now that percentage has gone down, but really what's going on there is that we added some roadways to our overall roadway network, and so that increased the number of roadways while the number of our roadways with pedestrian and bike facilities stayed about the same. So that percentage went down a little bit, but we kept that level of pedestrian and bike facilities the same. Finally, we have some crash statistics. So one thing I want to note here with these trends is that these are for all of Brevard County. When we get further into the presentation, we'll have some crash statistics for just the SOS roadway network, but for right now, this is all of Brevard County. That being said, the trends are good. We had a decrease in annual ped bike crashes, a decrease in annual vehicle crashes, annual fatal ped bike crashes stayed the same, and annual fatal vehicle crashes went down. Moving on, we have a brief discussion about traffic volumes. So this list of the highest roadway traffic volumes is probably not super surprising. It's about what it was last year. For roadways, Malabar Road, Palm Bay Road, US 1, Wickham Road, these are all in the top 10. That's about what it was last year. For intersections, that list is pretty similar to what it was last year. Palm Bay Road at Hollywood Boulevard was the top intersection this year. As you look to the right at that map, you can see a lot of these roadways are focused in southern Brevard County. I think that also tracks with what we've seen in previous years. Moving on, we've got some more crash trends. Like I mentioned before, that first table was for all of Brevard County, but now we're looking at crash trends on just SOS roadways. We saw about a 1% increase in crashes from 2015 to 2019 on the SOS roadway network. The map at the right shows you our top 25 corridors for crash frequency. And then at the bottom, you can see the top 3 corridors. So that's US 192, State Road 3 in Merritt Island, and Babcock Street. We have a couple more roadway crash trends. So vulnerable road users, that's pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorcyclists. That went down. It's great to see about a 15% decrease from 2015 to 2019, as well as serious injury and fatal crashes, which have also been going down. So it's great to see that in 2019, we had our lowest number of fatal crashes and serious injury crashes on the SOS roadway now. Moving on, we have a couple more statistics for vulnerable road users. Again, that's motorcycles, pedestrians, and bicyclists. On our SIS facilities, that is I-95 and State Road 528, we saw a slight increase, mostly due to motorcycle crashes. On non-SIS facilities, everything excluding I-95 and State Road 528, we saw a slight decrease. So hopefully that trend continues in the following years. Finally, we wanted to note for our top 25 pedestrian crash corridors and bike crash corridors, State Road A1A had 5 on each of those lists. That's about where it was last year, but we continue to see that trend. Moving on, we have our highest pedestrian crash corridors. So at the top of the list is State Road A1A, Palm Bay Road, US 1, another A1A corridor in Cocoa Beach, and Valley Boulevard. And we do have some intersection improvements planned in the safety project plan on those corridors, which we hope will help reduce crashes. Moving on, we have our highest bicycle crash corridors. So State Road 3, Babcock Street, US 192, A1A, and US 1 top the list. As you look and see in yellow, you can see where these corridors rank for the overall crash corridor list. So you can see there's some overlap between being high with bicycle crashes and being high with crashes overall. And we do have some intersection improvements planned there as well. And finally, we have our highest motorcycle crash corridors. US 1 is in the top 5 lots here with 4 of the 5 corridors, as well as Babcock Street. Again, we do have some projects planned that we hope will help reduce those crashes. So that's the presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Garrison? Do we have any virtual comments? Nothing. Okay, thank you, Mr. Garrison.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, our next item is the 2020, the public participation plan. Abby, you're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abby Hemingway, and I'm the Public Involvement Officer for the Space Coast TPO. And today I'm here to talk about our public participation plan measures of effectiveness. I kind of want to start out by saying, if you're new to this committee, every few years we're required to update our public participation plan. We just did that update in 2019. And as a goal of that document, we had a goal to create a report to kind of review our measures of effectiveness of our outreach methods and of our tools that we use to communicate. So this is not a requirement. This report really just serves as a tool to help us monitor what we're doing, and also just to serve as a transparent document of how we continue to strengthen our public involvement activities. So in your package, you have the full report. I'm just going to bring out some highlights of it. So here's just a brief review of the different public participation methods and tools that we use to engage the public in transportation planning. So we all know when it comes to public government and specifically TPOs and MPOs, the long-term practice has been to hold face-to-face meetings. But with COVID-19, that has kind of, we're reevaluating what we do in this new virtual world. So the ease and convenience of virtual meetings have really become the new norm. We can see that just on the TPO side of things, when this year alone, 2 of our most highly attended public events that happened during COVID-19, our annual open house, which was in June, we saw 62 attendees. And then most recently, we held our first public virtual roadway meeting for the Minton Road feasibility study in August, and we saw 70 attendees. And just to give you an idea, we're lucky if we get 15 attendees. So it's been quite a learning curve, but we're really excited about this new method of participation. And then of course, as committee members, you should be familiar with some of the types of tools that we use. We use surveys, questionnaires, our newsletter. Make sure if you're not receiving it, see me afterwards, or you can email me. And we use constant contact. There's a little bit of more description in your report that you can read through if you want to learn more about these tools. Our website, and of course, social media, which I will kind of elaborate on in a little bit. So this is a brief recap of our public participation methods. I want to add that this summary report is not a quantitative tool, so we're not comparing last year's numbers to this year's numbers and penalizing ourselves if we don't meet that goal. The numbers are always going to fluctuate on the programs, the projects that we're doing, right? So, for example, last year we had the Bike Ped Master Plan. We held 6 public meetings. Each one of those, we probably had 30+ people. And we saw lots of attendance for that face-to-face involvement. This year, we were in a global pandemic. There wasn't much we could do. So our numbers are great where they stand, but we always want to make sure that we leave that room for flexibility because we know that things can happen. So social media. I'm sure that these statistics aren't a surprise to anyone, but according to Statista, in 2018, Facebook was the most popular social networking site, drawing in 2.23 billion users. You can see YouTube kind of ranked number 2, and then Twitter followed a little bit behind. So the point is that regardless if our organization is on social media or not, chances are people are talking about it anyway on social media. They're posting about it, they're tweeting about it, and it's really our job as a public agency to steer that conversation and to lead it in the right direction, and most importantly, to tell our story. Someone mentioned that today. It's not a secret that social media sites have become a new space where citizens want to voice their opinion, share their input, and connect with others. So here's a brief summary of the different tools and numbers associated with that. As I said, there was more information in your report, definitions and terms if you're interested. Our numbers reflect, though, by and far that our public citizens and committee board members, stakeholders, and beyond want to receive information digitally. For example, regarding our digital communications, we use Constant Contact, which is an emailing service. We use it for newsletters, press releases, event invites, and more. And our organization numbers are actually higher than the average transportation industry rates. The average open rate for campaigns from transportation service agencies sits at 15.5%, and the click rate at 11.9%. You can see here that the TPO is well above those numbers. It's definitely something that we can be proud of. As for our social media numbers, they kind of speak for themselves. When we're telling the story, though, on social media, we don't post whatever we think the audience might like. Actually, you wouldn't think it, but transportation projects actually fire people up. So the good, the bad, the ugly, we try to ensure that that content is relevant and meaningful. And we're also taking advantage of different ways to target key audiences by boosting and advertising techniques to ensure the public is aware of an important project or plan, such as Vision Zero that Kim talked about earlier. And then lastly, I'd kind of be remiss if I didn't talk about the ways that we engage underserved and underrepresented populations. The TPO recognizes and acknowledges that not all public citizens have equal access to online public information. In order to provide equitable participation, we derive messages and delivery techniques with appropriate stakeholders for specific studies and projects. And we want to make sure that we have meaningful communication and dialogue with those groups. So this is just a small list of some of those organizations that we reach out to anytime we have a study, a plan, or a major project. So that's just kind of a recap. Like I said, your report has a lot more information, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Abby? Adam.
I can't help but notice that your effectiveness on next door dropped dramatically Do you have any reason, suspected reason why that occurred?
It's mainly because in last year, on the next door, we used it for the bike ped master plan, and we had 6 different public events, so we had a lot of posts on next door. We mainly use that method of social media when we're having public meetings. And so during the spring, we really didn't have any because of COVID. And then I think our last public meeting and next door was maybe for the LRTP as well, which was earlier. So there's not as many public meetings. It's really what we use that platform for.
I wasn't being critical. I just thought it would bring this out.
Right, and that's part of kind of the disclaimer that I said, you know, it can change from year to year. The goal is making sure that we're utilizing those social media platforms and that we're still getting good feedback. And on Nextdoor, we definitely still are. We used it a lot for Mitten Road, and actually a lot of people who attended said that they had heard about it on Nextdoor.
That was the number one method of people speaking of it.
Well, I've lived in northern Titusville for 10 years now, and I just was introduced to Nextdoor last year. And my wife was not keen about me getting involved, so she really doesn't know what I'm doing on there. But I was very blown away by its effectiveness. Last I looked, I think it was like 440, which is about half of the number of residents in our subdivision. We've got about 880 households and about 440 are participating, which surprised me immensely. So I use it. Not as much as I would like, but I just wanted to bring that out publicly. Thank you for your energy. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Hey, Sarah, we have any virtual questions or comments? No? Okay. Thank you, Abby. Moving on to the 2020 Mobility Week.
Yes.
And you're up again, Abby.
I'm up again. So before we kind of talk about our events planned for Mobility Week, we wanted to play a little promo video for those who may not know what Mobility Week is. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
What is Mobility Week? Community. Volunteers. New experiences. Leadership. In 2016, the Florida Department of Transportation kicked off its inaugural Mobility Week as a celebration of activities promoting transportation options and encouraging safe travel behavior in Central Florida. Since then, Mobility Week has grown to a statewide celebration of making smart, efficient, and safe transportation choices. During Mobility Week, counties, cities, and transportation agencies host events to promote safe and sustainable transportation choices. From 2016 to 2019, more than 300 events have been hosted. These events feature safety messages that reach kids, adults, and seniors. The secret about Mobility Week is that it is also a lot of fun. To partner with the Florida Department of Transportation on this year's Mobility Week, send an email to contact@mobilityweekfl.com. Learn more at www.mobilityweekfl.com.
So this is a event that we participated in as the TPO since 2016. It is, as was said in the video, this is something that Florida Department of Transportation puts on every year, and it's kind of gotten larger and larger. This year, the past couple of years, we've partnered with Space Coast Area Transit, and we have held some joint events, and we have some different things going on. It's really interesting because Mobility Week is actually about getting out there and being in front of the public and engaging and hands-on activities, being with kids, senior citizens, and this year it really just looks different because of COVID, but we're still really excited about some of these events. So I'm just going to walk through them. Here's kind of a bird's eye view of all the different things that are happening on different days. That way you can screenshot it later if you want to come to any of them. So as they said in the videos, Mobility Week is really a celebration of promoting multimodal transportation options. So it means let's get out of our car, let's bike, let's walk, let's take the bus. It's really about promoting different mobility options. So we're just going to walk through some of these. So first, we're going to kick off on October 30th. We're going to be presenting the Vision Zero Toolkit to municipality stakeholders. And it's going to be really exciting because they'll get the toolkit, everything that Ryan and Kim kind of discussed earlier. So it's going to be a great event. We're also going to have Melissa Wandel come. She's the president for the National Coalition of Safer Roads. She's going to be our keynote. So we're excited about that. On the same day, Space Coast Area Transit will be kicking off their 10 days of trolley. For those who don't know, we're going to have trolley service again in Brevard County. It's going to be awesome. It's going to start beachside, and so it'll be happening during this time frame. And Space Coast Area Transit is doing a few different things to promote that. First, they're going to have a kickoff event, and that's going to be at Cocoa Beach City Hall. The local officials will be there. There's a registration link, so if you're interested in signing up for that, it goes quick. And they can get that to you. And then the service will start that same week, and then they'll also be promoting it on social media. And then this is a fun event every year. Kim, who does our education and safety program, she normally partners and does Halloween events because Halloween is one of the #1 days of the year where kids get hit. So we make sure that they have safety goodies and lights and all that good stuff. So this year she's partnering with the city of Melbourne, and they're going to be doing a Quarantino-Ween drive-through trunk or treat. So it's really awesome that we get to participate in something that's safe, socially distanced, but we still get to engage with kids. Next up, we have two exciting things. On Election Day, November 3rd, as everyone knows, Space Coast Area Transit will be offering free fare on Election Day and on fixed routes. And so this is huge for Brevard County. It's also an incredible way to reach our transportation disadvantaged folks. So we're really excited about that. And then our own Sarah Crom, our senior transportation planner, on November 2nd, she'll be leading a Trail Talk webinar talking about all the best places in Brevard to walk and bike. So we're excited to talk about trails. Space Coast Area Transit will also be participating in a senior expo drive-through. So again, one of our underserved populations, we want to make sure that we're still engaging with them. They're going to be doing their own drive-through expo with them. So that'll be exciting. They're doing 4 different ones that Transit's going to participate in, one in Mobility Week. And then this event, we are going to be partnering with the City of Indian Harbor Beach Police Department on A1A to raise awareness about pedestrian safety at the newly installed rectangular rapid flashing beacons. We've done a few of these pop-ups for RFBs on beachside, but we have a great relationship with Indian Harbor Beach Police, and they haven't done any awareness on the street awareness, so we'll be waving signs, stop for pets. If you want to, we need volunteers if anyone wants to come out for that. It's going to be an evening event because that's when the time change happens, so we want to raise awareness about that. We most recently held a Stop on Red event in August, and it was awesome. It got a lot of media attention, so we're hoping for the same for this event. And then on Friday, the TPO will be leading a Twitter chat online talking about complete streets. We'll be highlighting some of our projects that we have done over the course of a few years, and we'll be educating citizens about the benefits of complete streets. One includes Florida Avenue and Beach Street, which is not too far from here. And then lastly, Space Coast Area Transit will be partnering with Space Coast Daily and the Space Coast State Park, and we'll be offering a discounted price for fare entrance for our bus riders. So that'll be awesome that they'll have the opportunity. That's it. So the best thing to do is please help us celebrate Mobility Week. You don't have to host your own event. You can come and help us, support us at one of our events, or if you just share on your own channels about the importance of making sure you get out of your car and do some other form of transportation, and making sure you're increasing awareness of people's ability to use different methods of transportation. That's it.
Okay, Adam.
Abby, I couldn't help but notice that the trolley's only going to be in Cocoa and Cape Canaveral. Can you explain that?
I can't, but Terry Jordan can.
Yeah, well, Terry, why don't we hold that until you give your presentation up there? That's okay. Any other questions for Abby? No, thank you, Abby. Okay, that takes us to our Florida Department of Transportation report. Is Ms. Taylor there?
Good afternoon. This is Rakenia Henson. I'm representing the Florida Department of Transportation District 5 office. And I just have a few brief comments. Excuse me. The first is in regards to the construction report for the Space Coast region. You have that information in your packet. The second is the department has resumed their public meetings that are being held. We'll continue to use the hybrid format where they're both online and in-person participants. And since those have been going very well, we're going to continue those. However, at this time, we don't have any public meetings scheduled in the Space Coast region for the month of October. And lastly, I'd like to mention that the district has scheduled the work program public hearing for the week of December 7th through the 11th. All the documents will be posted on the website, and a public hearing will be held on December the 10th. At this time, we're still working on the details for the meetings, and we'll share them with you all as soon as that date draws closer. Those conclude my remarks, but I am available for any comments or questions at this time.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Hinson? Seeing none. Thank you, Regina.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to bike ped. Sarah.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Sarah Cron, the Senior Transportation Planner with Space Coast TPO. I have a very brief report today. We have not, the VPAC has not met since August, and so you received kind of details about what their last meeting included. However, the draft minutes are included in this meeting package, so you can look through those if you're interested. Our next meeting will be October 26th. And also for a very brief trail update, a tiny little segment in Titusville was completed of the Space Coast Trail. So right now we have the coast to coast in Brevard completed from Volusia County line to the Memorandum National Wildlife Refuge, which is very exciting that a cyclist could completely ride that entire strip. The section on Memorandum National Wildlife Refuge is under design, and we'll see construction in a couple of years here. So that's all I have to report today.
Any questions for Sarah? Thank you, Sarah. Next up is our transit report, Terry.
Good afternoon, everyone. And as Sarah, same thing, be very brief as well. A whole lot of reports. So first, I'll address Mr. Cole's question regarding the trolleys, and the beachside service is primarily because they are going to be operating on Route 9, which services that segment between Cape Canaveral and Cocoa Beach. We have a third trolley that's going to be purchased and hopefully delivered before the end of the year, and then that's going to travel down beachside through Indian Harbor, Satellite Beach, and then down to Empty Alley. So as of right now, the designated service is beachside, which, if anyone has been around the area for any number of years, they remember the original trolleys. That's where they pretty much ran the beach area. More of a touristy type service more than anything else. That was the original designation of the trolleys. So this, as far as my report goes, one of the bigger things that we resumed fare collection last Thursday, October the 1st. We've been fare free throughout the pandemic for various reasons, but we just started collecting fares. Places like the Brevard Engagement Center, Easter Seals, and Bridges are now also open, so we resume a good portion of our demand response ridership. Our fixed route ridership remains probably roughly about 76% of our normal, but it's about 22% down year-to-year comparison. So we're doing fairly decent because we had a good start of the year, but everything kind of tanked, of course, when we went into this COVID situation. I just mentioned our new inventory receipt will be one new trolley, but we also expect 2 hybrid vehicles before the end of the year potentially. And then we're also investigating an electric van for our, our volunteers in motion service, which is primarily a van operated service. So we're looking at a smaller vehicle for that. That's pretty much it. Any questions, any additional questions anyone has?
Greg?
Yeah, Terry. I was disappointed to see the 5-year numbers and obviously the 1-year numbers. I think that we can an initial explanation on. The drop of 23% in 5 years is pretty disappointing for me. I'm sure you guys are working hard. What's going on?
Which report are you looking at?
The state of the system report, where it spells out from 2015 to 2019.
Well, overall, and of course, that's not a number that was produced by Transflex for the transit, but it actually is reflective of the transit industry overall. As reported earlier, one of the main reasons why we see the decrease is primarily vehicle ownership. Over the last 3 or so years, you've seen the decrease in gasoline prices. So individuals that may have used transit have been able to now use automobile. But then over the last 2 years, you've seen the rideshare services increase. So what were being a potential previous customers now have alternatives. But also, just like I said, the industry overall nationwide has seen a decrease in transit ridership, and now we're going to see a significant decrease with this year's.
Well, yeah, we understand.
Exactly.
How about when you bring up, like you've got 1 or 2 new routes coming online in 2021?
Correct.
April 3rd, we can help some numbers for you?
We anticipate, because those areas are currently without any type of service, and so we do anticipate there'll be a good amount of ridership on the vehicles. However, for the overall average of riders by comparison to last year, we don't think that it'll bring it back to last year's levels, or 2019's levels, I should say. But of course, there will be new riders garnished, and potentially in a year or so, maybe see some increases. But by comparison to the automobile, it's a hard fight to fight.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Terry? Adam?
Just quick, you're gonna have an update on the new route in November?
An update on the new route? The new route, the new service, when you say new route, the new service that we are going to implement will not start until next April.
So when are you planning to give us an update on that?
I'm not understanding the question.
Well, you told us last month that it was delayed because of COVID-19. So I was just wondering if you were going to be talking about the new route that you presented to us a few months ago before April rolls around. That's all.
Okay. Let me answer it this way. Maybe I'm not understanding the question completely. So at our last meeting, I presented a new service that's going to be implemented in April of 2021. And that was pretty much given where the service is going to operate, the times of operation. I can provide that information. As far as an update on the new route, nothing is going to happen until April 2021. So that's where I'm kind of thinking you're going with. There's really not much else to present other than a schedule, if that was what you were getting at.
What I was getting at, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And excuse me for not understanding your question.
Well, I didn't use the word schedule, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely provide a schedule. The schedule's been completed. We're going to tweak it, but it pretty much is just showing the hourly operations, the times that the service starts, and then the individual time point locations. Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other questions for Terry? Yeah, I've got a question, Terry. Where will the hybrid vehicles be used?
Hasn't been designated yet. I actually can get with our operations manager to find out specifically if there's actually any area that they've looked at, but I don't know offhand yet.
Okay.
But I will answer that question. Very good.
All right, thanks, Terry.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Terry? Seeing none, thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
Okay, that brings us to our local government report. Does anyone have anything? Seeing none, before I adjourn the meeting, just a reminder to everyone, our next meeting is not until December 7th. At that point, the governor's executive order allowing virtual meetings will probably have expired and not be renewed. So it's important that everyone realize we do need to have a physical quorum present. If you have any, present reason why you feel you can't attend, you still may attend virtually, but we do need to have a physical quorum present. If there's nothing else, meeting is adjourned.
Oh, yeah.